This afternoon, joining me in the studios is One Nation leader Pauline Hanson. It's good to see you. Welcome, Pauline.
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been in here, hasn't it?
It has been a little while, but it's good to have you back in WA on the dual campaign trail for both the state and the federal election.
Yeah, with the state election on March the 8th, and the federal election could be called at any time. I'm predicting he'll call it on the Monday after the state election.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I reckon that he'll be here on the Saturday night when, Roger Cook, let's be honest, he'll win the election. He'll be standing there with his hands in the air with Roger Cook and try and go back to Canberra, see the Governor-General and dissolve the Parliament.
Well, that's what I think. So they're predicting about the first week or 12th of April to have the federal election.
And that's what you're gearing up for?
Yeah, look, it's you never stop campaigning, really, to get your policies out there, what you stand for, what you fight for people on the floor of Parliament, which I have done. So, just because an election's in the air, I'm constantly at it all the time, trying to fight for people.
And then we got the state election first. Rod Caddies, you are the leader of One Nation in WA and hoping to obviously secure a legislative council seat. Are you confident you can win that, Rod?
Oh, I think the feedback on the ground, we're doing pretty well. What the people are telling me, they're sick of the two major parties and what they haven't produced for this state. They've had surpluses in our health department. We have ambulance ramping out of control. There's all sorts of issues there that the Labor government haven't addressed. So I think we've got a lot of support out there.
Got a few candidates running in the state election, Rod?
Yeah, we've got 41 candidates. So, yeah, and a lot of good quality candidates that are going to represent the community well if elected.
Pauline, today's the interest rate cut day. Is this going to be the sugar hit for the Prime Minister that he's after with his re-election chances?
I don't think it's the sugar hit that the Prime Minister needs. It's a sugar hit that the Australian people need. And it ranges from $600,000 to $700,000 loan that you may have, anywhere between $1,200, $1,500 a year. It's going to save people. So to pay the registration. The trouble is cost of living is just, you might get it back in, if the banks pass it on, you're going to get it back in one pocket, but you're actually paying it out in the other hand with rising costs, food, groceries, electricity. That's the biggest driver is electricity. It's killing a lot of people. So the government legislation they brought down the last 2.5, nearly 3 years, the Labor Party's spin in there has been atrocious. It has, they've been the worst economic managers of this country that I've seen in my time in politics.
The big issue that we get on the talkback lines, house prices have obviously gone through the roof in WA in the last few years. So if you own a home or you're obviously paying off the mortgage, you're pretty happy. But if you aren't in the market, it's hard to get in. If you're trying to rent a property, we've got next to nothing available in Western Australia. And everybody keeps providing the similar feedback. Well, what are we going to do about migration into Australia? And what are we going to do about trying to give West Australians the opportunity to buy or at least rent a home? I know you've got some pretty aggressive migration targets as One Nation policy, and you'd like to see the majors obviously consider that.
Ollie, right from the beginning, I've always spoken about high immigration. I am not against migration at all, but you've got to bring in the right people, and you have to do it in a well-managed manner so it doesn't impact the standard of living for Australians here. You cannot bring in 1.4 million Australians over a period of 2.5 years. On average, they were bringing in 700,000 a year into the country without the impact. That's why we haven't got the housing. They put $10 billion into this housing fund. Guess what? It's been out there for 18 months. Not one house built, but it's cost $36 million in administrative costs so far. Then they put more money into it. Where are the workers? Let me tell the people out there. Between 22 and 23, they brought in 737,000 migrants into the country, supposed to be for skilled workers. 51,605 were skilled workers, only 1,800 in the construction industry. So Labor had no plans of actually addressing it. What I see now is both the Labor and the Coalition have picked up my policy of stopping foreign investment in Australia or buying up our housing. I've been saying that for years. I could see the problems it was causing and our land, but they only intend to do it for 2 years. I'm not putting time limit on it. We can't. But also, what I'm saying is those people, the foreign investors that don't sell up their housing within 2 years, under my policy, it will be repossessed. We don't need cashed up foreign investors here because our dollar is that low. They can afford to pay these high prices, driving Australians out of the market and can't afford it.
Rod, are you finding, as you're door knocking around Western Australia at the moment, and obviously for a state election, that there's a lot of crossover with the issues on the Western Australian agenda and on the national agenda? And what's the sentiment you're receiving from people in regards to the state and the federal government?
Yeah. A lot of people obviously don't understand politics at the best of times, so they don't see any difference. Quite a few people between state and federal. So there has been a lot of crossover in what they talk about, and they'll be talking about federal policies to me and how I'm going to change that. And I have to explain to them people that the difference. So there's been a lot of talk, a lot of unhappy people at both levels, both at state and federal. The one minute they're talking about ambulance ramping, and the next minute it's about immigration and too many people. So there's been a lot of crossover that I've heard.
The Prime Minister is obviously in the fight of his electoral life. All the polls are pointing to the fact that we may have a switch of governments whenever we do go to the ballot box, and Peter Dutton appears to be in the box seat. Pauline, you've obviously spent a lot of time in Parliament over the decades. What's this particular Parliament been like? Because there's a lot of crossbenchers with you there in the Senate.
There is. It's run by the crossbench, mainly three of them that actually run the House there. Or there's a few independents now because Fata Payman has left the Labor Party. She's now on the crossbench. Then you've got Lydia Thorpe left the Greens. She's now on the crossbench. You've got Van, who was with the Libs. He's now on the crossbench. So then mainly it's Labor. The Greens support them up in legislation. Then you've got David Pocock. He's supposed to teal greenie that he is. They got a lot of support from Jackie Lambie to support the Labor Greens policies. Lydia Thorpe as well, and Fata Payman. So, and Van now is also supporting Labor Greens. So it really is a controlled parliament. Let me tell people there. Anthony Albanese said he would have an accountable government. We're going to be up front, you can see what's happening. Do you know that they've pushed through approximately 215 pieces of legislation that they have guillotined that we can't debate on the floor of Parliament, and they just push it through with the help of these crossbench, these independents. It is not a parliament for the people. It is just being dictated to, and this is the way it's going to be. We don't even know. Sometimes we have legislation coming up that morning, which we're going to vote on that day, that afternoon, without discussion.
Why?
Because they can do it. They get them and they push it through. You see, what Albanese in the Labor Party don't want is debate on this legislation, because it'll show it up for what it is. Do you know they put up legislation that is not properly thought out, and then they put amendments to their own legislation that's up for the vote. So everything there is not thought out. It's all band-aiding the whole lot all the time. And I don't have a lot of faith in the coalition either, and their policies they're putting up there as well. And they fight back. They've been poor to actually fight back or call it out on the floor of Parliament. I do more of the job at calling out the Labor Party on the floor of Parliament, the Greens, than what the coalition do.
Isn't it interesting? Is it because of all the different independents, all the different parties that are now making up what is the Senate? Because, again, polls will point towards the fact there is a big shift away from the majors.
It is. In the last election, yes, they only got 33% and 34% last election. So you got now about a third of the populace out there don't want to vote for either the major political parties. But be careful with it now on who you vote for, because, as I said, Fatima Payman, she started up her own political party. She's very much to the left, right? So you have to understand the politics of it. When it comes down to, say if Dutton gets in the lower house, but he doesn't control the upper house, it comes down to, say, One Nation, because we are conservative. All right, the values that are Australian and supporting businesses, farming sector and common sense policies. I'm not against the workers. I'm not against unions, but there is a place for them. Unions should not be dictating and telling the government how to run the place. And that's our big problem that we have. So when it comes to that, hopefully that we have a place in the upper house, in the Senate, the federal election, that we can then determine and make sure good legislation gets passed. If not, let's amend it. Let's talk about, as I did under the Turnbull-Morrison government when we had the shared balance power. And one of the ministers said to me, she said, Pauline, she said, we put up good legislation, but it's great working with you because you've improved our legislation, because we do the research into it to understand the impact it's going to have on the Australian people.
So you think you could have, in a Dutton-led government, you could have the balance of power in the Senate?
We could. Or if Albanese gets back in the lower house, we could possibly even have the balance of power in the upper house to stop him forcing this through. If we end up, and I mean this sincerely, Ollie, if we end up with another Albanese Greens with some of the crossbench in that parliament, they will do so much damage in the next 3 years, I doubt we'll ever be able to turn it around. We had 11,000 small businesses go insolvent last year. They're expected 16,000 this year. In total, 27,000 under the Albanese Labor government. We're spending billions on this climate change. Net zero, what is it? We're destroying our economy because of this. No amount of money that you pay into these taxes is ever going to change it. You cannot change the 3% of human carbon emissions compared to 97% of carbon emissions that comes from the natural resources, the oceans and the earth. You can never do it. It's been a scam and people have been fed a lot of lies. Let's get some truth. Let's get debate on the matter.
Are you recruiting Barnaby Joyce into One Nation?
I tried to. Okay. Yes, I did. After the debacle that he went through in Canberra last year, his colleagues were advising him should leave Parliament. Well, I thought, no, I like Barnaby, okay? He's a straight shooter. He says what he thinks. And I said, Barnaby, come across the One Nation. Well, he did give it some thought, but he said no, and he stuck with the Nationals. So that's all, storm and teacup. And no, Barnaby, I hope we don't lose him in the near future. I think he's good value. If
he doesn't get a position around a potential Liberal National Cabinet table, though, you reckon you might have another crack at trying to recruit him?
Look, Barnaby had that opportunity. This was about a year ago, Ollie. He made this decision to stay with the National Party. He'll be running at this election as the National, and so, that's what it is now.
Okay. You had somebody on your books here in Western Australia for a little while who now goes by the name of Aussie Trump.
Oh, God. I've heard about that, my God. Can't believe it.
Formerly Ben Dawkins.
Yes.
And he's no longer even part of One Nation. But
no.
He's trying to change his name to get in the Australian Parliament or the West Australian Parliament being known as Aussie Trump.
No, he's trying to sell that one to me. I said, I'm not buying. People don't want, people who just, it's a whim. It's just a stunt. I don't like stunts, To be in politics is to be fair dinkum with the people. I don't need people to play stunts. And the people don't want it either.
No, I don't think they want that either. I think people can see through it.
Yep.
Rod, what do you reckon the chances are for One Nation here in WA come March 8?
Oh, we're doing very well. Like I said, all the people on the ground are very positive. They're saying they don't want to vote for either of the major parties, and we're getting a lot of support. So who knows how that will turn out in the votes on the day. You can never tell that, but I've got a really good feeling we're going to be strong. Because
they've obviously changed the composition of the upper house in Western Australia, and it really is to more or less shore up the major parties. Does that make life a lot more difficult as an independent or as a minor party? You don't think so?
No, it doesn't, because it's proportional representation now. So rather than your regions throughout the state to vote on, it's the vote right across the state. So if you look at, I think it's 2.4%?
2.6.
To actually win a seat.
Right.
So it depends on what your polling is, and people get out and vote. And I'll tell the people out there, your insurance of good legislation, good policy and accountability is to put One Nation in the upper house. And I'll tell people that. And have a look at the state of this Western Australia. What I'm hearing about your hospitals, the ramping, what I'm suggesting, Rod, is put the money into the hospital boards. Let the hospital set up their own boards, give them the money to run their own hospitals. They know where to put the money. When you haven't got hospital beds, what needs to be looked at is a lot of the beds have been taken up by the aged who shouldn't be in hospitals taking up these beds. Other facilities should be provided for them, not hospital beds for people who are truly sick. Hospital ramping, that's because you've got lack of beds as well. We've had big problems with getting nurses, health workers. What I've put out also as a policy federally is that if you're an aged pensioner, you can actually go out and work unlimited hours and it will not affect your pension. Just pay the tax on your
as it should be.
It does. We lost a lot of people due to COVID that retired before their time, before they wanted to. So we have that knowledge and experience, and especially in health professionals that have left it, nurses and everyone like that, get them back into the workforce. And that's You know, these are things, Ollie, that I think we can make a difference with it. And just quickly, to tell people about my income splitting taxation. So if you've got a couple, you have one dependent child, you can actually split your income. So if one stays home, the other one goes to work, they split their income. So fact is that if one earns $120,000 a year, you then split that income, $60,000 each, and then you pay tax on that. That will save $10,000 a year per household, family. So we're looking at policies, and I won't forget the self-funded independent retirees over 67 years of age. You get nothing from the government. You've saved your money, you've gone without, you're in that position now. You don't get a pension, you're not a drain on the society, on the welfare. So what I'm saying, raise your tax-free threshold, like everyone else, from about $18,600 to $35,000 before you start paying tax.
Pauline Hanson, Rod Caddies, thank you very much for coming to the studios today, and good luck with your election campaigns.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ollie.
I've got a positive feeling about this, so people get out there, make sure you vote for One Nation. You'll get true representation.
Good on you, Pauline. Good on you, Rod.